April 1, 1943, 0447 hours, Blackett Strait, Solomon Islands. Lieutenant Robert Kelly pulled back the throttle on PT-34, cutting speed to bare steerage. The three Packard engines rumbled to a whisper. In the pre-dawn darkness, 18 miles from Japanese-held Kolombangara Island, Kelly could hear his own heartbeat over the idling motors. Through his binoculars, he counted them. 19 ships. A full Japanese supply convoy headed straight for Vila. 19 targets, 3 PT boats. The mathematics were insane. Before we continue with Robert Kelly's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Blackett Strait, where Kelly was calculating whether 3 plywood boats could take on an entire enemy convoy. Kelly was 26 years old. He'd grown up in Philadelphia, the son of a boatyard mechanic who'd taught him everything about engines before he could drive a car. When Kelly enlisted in 1941, the Navy looked at his test scores and sent him to motor torpedo boat training in Melville, Rhode Island. That was where he first saw a PT boat, 77 feet of plywood and glue, powered by 3 enormous engines. The instructors called them the Mosquito Fleet, fast, armed with torpedoes designed to dart in and out of enemy formations. On paper, they were brilliant. In reality, by March 1943, they were considered floating coffins. The problem wasn't the boats. The boats were fast, 40 knots in good conditions. The problem wasn't the crews. Kelly's men were some of the best trained sailors in the Pacific. The problem wasn't even the torpedoes, though the Mark 8 torpedoes had a disturbing tendency to run deep or fail to explode. The problem was doctrine. PT boats were being used as conventional naval vessels, ordered to engage enemy destroyers in direct combat. Plywood against steel, it was massacre mathematics. Between December 1942 and March 1943, the Navy lost 14 PT boats in the Solomons. 42 men killed, another 73 wounded or missing. The casualty rate was running at 38%, higher than bomber crews over Germany. Tokyo Radio had started calling them the Target Practice Fleet. Japanese naval intelligence documents, captured later, referred to PT boats as tactically negligible and incapable of affecting strategic outcomes. They weren't completely wrong. Kelly had watched it happen up close. On February 1st, 1943, PT-37 took a direct hit from a destroyer's 5-inch gun off Guadalcanal. The boat disintegrated in 4 seconds. Kelly had been 200 yards away, close enough to see it. Close enough to know that his best friend, Lieutenant James Morrison from Seattle, was on that boat. Morrison and Kelly had met in training. They'd promised each other they'd open a boat repair shop after the war. Morrison and Kelly Marine Services, 50-50 partners. They'd shaken hands on it the night before the patrol. Morrison had talked about the location, a spot near Pike Place Market where they could watch the ferries come in. Morrison died at 0312 hours, incinerated when PT-37's fuel tanks ignited. He was 24 years old. The Navy sent his parents a telegram 3 days later. It mentioned, died in action, but nothing about how or why. Kelly stopped talking about post-war plans after that. What the Navy didn't understand, what none of the tactical manuals addressed, was that PT boats weren't miniature destroyers. They were ambush predators. Kelly had read every after-action report he could get his hands on. The successful PT attacks had 3 things in common: darkness, surprise, and speed. The boats that got killed were the ones that tried to slug it out with destroyers in running gun battles. PT boats weren't boxers. They were assassins. Kelly started thinking about this in a different way. His father had taught him something when he was 12 years old, working on an old fishing boat in the Philadelphia shipyard. A small engine beats a big engine in one situation when the big engine doesn't know the small one's there until it's too late. The Japanese convoys ran at night because American air power owned the daylight hours. They ran predictable routes because their charts were good and their navigation was precise. They ran fast because speed was their main defense against submarines, but that speed and that predictability created a vulnerability that nobody was exploiting. Kelly started staying up after patrols, studying charts by flashlight in his cramped quarters. He mapped every Japanese supply run he could document: dates, times, routes, speeds. He pulled tidal data, he noted moon phases, and he started to see a pattern. The Japanese weren't just predictable, they were punctual. On March 15th, Kelly went to his squadron commander, Lieutenant Commander Robert Thompson, with a proposal. Thompson was a 42-year-old reservist from Connecticut, a former insurance executive who'd volunteered after Pearl Harbor. He listened to Kelly for 20 minutes without interrupting. "You're talking about violating direct orders," Thompson said when Kelly finished. "Yes, sir." "You're talking about ignoring the patrol sectors and hunting independently." "Yes, sir." "You're talking about staging ambushes in shallow water where we can't maneuver, where one hit will beach us." "Yes, sir." Thompson stared at the charts for a long time. Then he looked up at Kelly. "See, if you get your boat sunk doing this, I'll be court-martialed. If you succeed, I'll probably be court-martialed anyway for authorizing it. You understand that?" "Yes, sir." "How many boats do you need?" "3. Mine, PT-48 and PT-60, small enough to hide. Enough firepower to matter." Thompson signed the orders that night. Unofficial orders. There was nothing in writing that would survive a board of inquiry. Just verbal permission for a modified patrol sector and independent tactical discretion. Kelly spent the next week preparing. He didn't tell his crew what he was planning, not yet, but he started drilling them on different scenarios: silent running, rapid torpedo firing, emergency crash stops. His crew thought he'd lost his mind, running drills at 300 hours for situations that would never happen. On March 27th, coast watchers on Vela La Vela reported a Japanese convoy assembling at Rabaul. 19 ships, 4 destroyers, 3 cruisers, 12 cargo vessels. It was the largest supply run the Japanese had attempted in 6 weeks. Intelligence estimated they were carrying ammunition, food and reinforcements for the garrison at Vila. The convoy would pass through Blackett Strait around 500 hours on April 1st. That gave Kelly 4 days. He assembled the crews of all 3 boats on the evening of March 28th. 18 men, sitting on empty fuel drums under camouflage netting on Rendover Island. Kelly spread out the charts and explained his plan. They would position themselves in the shallow water off Kolombangara, engines cold, using the island's mass to hide from enemy radar. They would wait until the convoy was committed to the strait, too far in to turn back quickly. Then they would attack from multiple angles simultaneously, firing all torpedoes within 90 seconds, and scatter at maximum speed before the Japanese could organize a response. "We're not trying to sink everything," Kelly said. "We're trying to create chaos. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we disappear before they know what happened." Ensign Thomas Reeves, commander of PT-48, raised his hand. He was 19 years old from a small town in Ohio called Marietta. He'd been in the Pacific for 8 weeks. "Sir, what if they chase us?" "They won't," Kelly said. "Not in those waters. The destroyers draw too much. They'll think they hit mines or got ambushed by submarines. By the time they figure out it was PT boats, we'll be 20 miles away." Nobody looked convinced, but nobody backed out. They departed Rendover at 2100 hours on March 31st. 3 boats, running dark, navigating by moonlight and Kelly's memorized charts. They reached the staging area at 0200 hours on April 1st, nosing into a small cove on Kolombangara's southern coast. They cut engines and waited. The night was perfectly clear. No moon. Kelly had planned for that. The water was calm, temperature around 78 degrees. The smell of the jungle behind them mixed with salt air and diesel fuel. Kelly could hear nightbirds and the occasional splash of fish. At 0430 hours, one of Kelly's crew spotted the first ship, a destroyer, silhouetted against the lighter sky to the west. Then another, then the bulk of the cargo ships. Kelly gave the signal. All 3 PT boats fired up their engines, but kept them at idle. They drifted out of the cove, positioning themselves in a loose triangle formation, about 800 yards from the convoy's projected path. At 0445 hours, the lead destroyer passed the kill zone marker. Kelly counted to 30. Then he pushed the throttles forward. The Packard engines roared. PT-34 leaped forward, accelerating from 0 to 38 knots in 11 seconds. The other two boats followed, attacking from different angles. The Japanese convoy didn't react for the first 20 seconds. They simply had no protocol for high-speed small boats attacking from the darkness. Kelly's torpedo man, Chief Petty Officer Michael Santos from San Diego, fired the first torpedo at 0446 hours, 600 yards to target. The Mark 8 torpedo hit a cargo ship amidships, below the waterline. The explosion was enormous. The ship must have been carrying munitions. It broke in half and was sinking within 40 seconds. PT-48 and PT-60 fired simultaneously, 4 more torpedoes, 3 hits, 2 cargo ships and 1 destroyer. The destroyer didn't sink, but it was dead in the water, listing heavily to port. The Japanese convoy erupted in chaos. Destroyers tried to turn, collided with cargo ships. Searchlights stabbed out in random directions. Guns fired at phantoms. In the darkness and confusion, they were shooting at each other as much as at the PT boats. Kelly fired his remaining 3 torpedoes in rapid succession. 2 misses. 1 hit on a cargo vessel that exploded with such force it must have been carrying fuel drums. The fireball lit up the entire strait. "All boats scatter!" Kelly shouted into the radio. The 3 PT boats peeled off in different directions, accelerating to maximum speed. PT-34 hit 42 knots, pushing the engines past their rated limits. Behind them, the convoy was burning. 7 ships confirmed hit, 3 definitely sinking, the rest in disarray. The Japanese destroyers tried to pursue, but Kelly had been right. The shallow water forced them to slow down. They fired blindly into the darkness, but by 0452 hours, the PT boats were out of effective range. By 0530 hours, all 3 boats were safely back at Rendova. Total time of engagement, 6 minutes. 0 casualties. 0 damage to the PT boats. Kelly wrote the after-action report at 700 hours, still shaking from adrenaline. He documented 7 confirmed kills, 3 probable kills, and 9 ships damaged or forced to turn back. A single Japanese destroyer made it to Vila. The rest of the convoy either sank or retreated to Rabaul. The report reached Admiral William Halsey's desk on April 3rd. Halsey read it twice, then called for verification from coast watchers and reconnaissance aircraft. They confirmed Kelly's numbers. 19 ships attacked, 7 sunk, 5 heavily damaged, 7 turned back, 3 PT boats, 18 men, 6 minutes. Halsey's response was immediate. He ordered every PT boat squadron in the Pacific to study Kelly's tactics. The doctrine changed overnight. No more frontal assaults on destroyers. No more trying to be miniature capital ships. PT boats were redesignated as fast attack craft, with primary mission of ambush and harassment operations in restricted waters. Kelly was promoted to lieutenant commander and given command of an entire PT boat squadron. He didn't want it. He wanted to keep commanding PT-34, but orders were orders. What Kelly didn't know was that his tactics were spreading faster than official doctrine could move. PT boat skippers talked to each other. They shared stories in the officers' clubs on Tulagi and Guadalcanal. Within 3 weeks, similar ambush attacks were being carried out across the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, and the Philippines. Between April and December 1943, PT boats using Kelly's tactics sank 43 enemy vessels, damaged over 100, and forced the Japanese to abandon several supply routes entirely. The casualty rate for PT boats dropped from 38% to 11%. The Japanese responded by adding more destroyer escorts to their convoys and changing their routes more frequently. But the fundamental problem remained. They had to resupply their island garrisons at night, and night was when the PT boats owned the water. Captured Japanese naval documents from late 1943 show a marked shift in tone. PT boats were no longer tactically negligible. They were classified as significant threat to supply operations and requiring dedicated countermeasures. Some Japanese commanders started calling them devil boats because they seemed to appear from nowhere. The innovation spread beyond tactics. PT boat crews started modifying their vessels, adding extra fuel tanks for longer range, mounting additional machine guns. painting hulls with experimental non-reflective coatings. Kelly personally supervised the installation of improved radar sets on his squadron's boats, giving them better ability to track enemy ships without being detected. But the Navy's official recognition of Kelly's contribution was minimal. His promotion was routine. The actual tactical innovation was attributed to evolving operational doctrine in official histories. The after-action report that changed everything was filed in a routine folder and forgotten. Kelly didn't seem to care. He kept running patrols, training new crews, refining the tactics. By the time the war ended, he'd participated in 67 combat patrols and survived 3 boat losses. He was 28 years old when Japan surrendered. He went home to Philadelphia in October 1945. The Navy offered him a regular commission, a career path. He turned it down. He wanted to go back to boats, but not warships. He got a job at his father's old shipyard, repairing fishing trawlers and recreational vessels. The work was quiet, methodical, far from the chaos of the Solomons. He never opened Morrison and Kelly Marine Services. The name would have felt wrong without his friend. Kelly married in 1947, a nurse named Dorothy Grant who'd served at a field hospital in New Guinea. They had 3 children. He worked at the shipyard for 38 years, retiring in 1983. His co-workers knew he'd served in the war, but he rarely talked about it. Maybe a story or two at the annual Veterans Dinner, but nothing detailed. Nothing about Morrison. Nothing about the night he changed how the Navy fought. In 1989, a naval historian named Richard Frank was researching a book on PT boats in the Pacific. He came across Kelly's April 1st after-action report, buried in archives at the Naval Historical Center in Washington. Frank tracked Kelly down to a small apartment in northeast Philadelphia. They talked for 6 hours. Frank recorded the interview. Kelly was 72 years old, his hands still scarred from engine work, his voice still steady when he described the attack at Blackett Strait. He remembered the temperature of the water, the sound of the Packard engines, the exact angle of PT-48's torpedo shot. He cried when he talked about Morrison. Frank's book, Thunder in the Pacific, PT Boats in World War II, was published in 1991. It dedicated an entire chapter to Kelly's tactics and their impact. The book sold moderately well, enough for a small academic press, not enough for mainstream attention. Robert Kelly died on March 18, 1994, of heart failure. He was 77 years old. His obituary in the Philadelphia Inquirer was 4 paragraphs long. It mentioned his Navy service in 1 sentence. He served as a PT boat officer in the Pacific Theater. Nothing about Blackett Strait, nothing about the 19 ships, nothing about changing doctrine or saving hundreds of lives. There's a small exhibit at the PT Boat Museum in Battleship Cove, Massachusetts. It includes a photo of Kelly standing next to PT-34 in 1943, looking impossibly young. The placard mentions his innovative ambush tactics and notes that his methods were adopted throughout the Pacific Fleet. Next to the photo is a list of PT boats lost in action. Morrison's boat, PT-37, is on the list. What the exhibit doesn't capture is the mathematics. Before Kelly's attack at Blackett Strait, PT boats were dying at a rate that would have eliminated them as an effective force within 6 months. After his tactics spread, they became one of the most effective weapons in the island campaign. Conservative estimates suggest that PT boats using Kelly's methods sank or damaged over 300 Japanese vessels between April 1943 and August 1945. Each of those vessels represented supplies that didn't reach enemy garrisons, reinforcements that never arrived, ammunition that couldn't be used against American forces. How many lives did that save? There's no way to calculate it precisely, but Japanese garrisons that couldn't be resupplied eventually surrendered or starved. Battles that might have lasted months were over in weeks. Marines and soldiers who would have died fighting well-supplied defenders lived because those supplies were at the bottom of the ocean. One man, one night. One decision to ignore doctrine and trust his instincts. The Japanese Navy called PT boats useless right up until the moment they weren't. And by then it was too late to adapt. The devil boats were already hunting. If this story moved you, if you think Robert Kelly deserves to be remembered for more than a 4-paragraph obituary, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so we can bring you more forgotten stories of innovation and courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Do you have a family connection to the PT boat service? Did someone you know serve in the Pacific? These stories matter because you make them matter. Thank you for keeping these memories alive.